T minus 30 seconds. T minus 20 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Kush's Corner here on the Trap Talk Reptile Network, the coolest reptile network in the world. Tonight, I am joined once again by Terry Cullen of the Dragonwood Wildlife Conservancy. And tonight is all about Cyclura, the Caribbean rock iguana, some of the most amazing reptiles in the entire world. Terry, while he doesn't let me call him an expert on anything, is close to an expert on Cyclura, as you are going to find out there. And I am extremely excited to get into this conversation tonight. But before we do so, as always, of course, USARC. So USARC is the organization that is fighting for our rights to keep our reptiles, to run our reptile businesses, and to live this lifestyle. Check out usarc.org for all of the information you need to know about the organization. That website is also where you can find alerts on any new pieces of legislation introduced either at the national level or at local levels, as well as to keep up on any sort of progress on any bills. You can also become a member of USARC at usarc.org. As a community, we have strength in numbers, and the more people that are behind the cause, the better. And here we are, a few minutes late. Some pretty major technical difficulties on my side. StreamYard has been giving me some headache over the last couple of weeks, but hopefully that is all past us now. So my apologies to any live listeners. We're starting the show about 10 minutes late and on a new stream. So hopefully you guys can find it if you're listening live. Of course, if you're listening after the fact, that this has no bearing on you. But with that said, if you are here on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel. A new podcast comes out every single day of the week from some of the best hosts in the game, talking about a wide variety of topics within reptiles. We are also on all of the audio platforms, be that Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, wherever you can get your podcast, you can get the Trap Talk Reptile Network. A follow and a 5-star review on any of those platforms would be most appreciated. With that out of the way, let's bring Terry on to the show. All right, we finally made it. Here we are.
Finally did it.
We did.
Smaller than we'd like to be, but
but
it is what it is.
Yes, it is. All right. Well, thank you again, Terry, for being here tonight. And, when you floated this idea by me for the show, I was extremely excited right away. I've always been fascinated by Cyclura. I think they're some of the most incredible lizards in the entire world, really reptiles, period. And I'm excited to learn more about them tonight.
Well, they are every bit of that and more. They're so much different than what most people attach the name iguana to. Those green things that fall out of the trees when it gets cold.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're just a whole different group of animals. They are iguanas in name only, as I'm fond of saying. I, in my lifetime, have lived for long periods of time among various species of Cyclura. I am, as far as I know, the only person alive who saw the Navassa iguana before it was completely extirpated. I shouldn't say extirpated. It was just plain old extinct. I was the person who had to announce that it was one of the worst days of my life. The Navassa Island iguana was one of the Metapocerus group. Metapocerus was the subgenera, or subgenus rather, that the rhino iguanas used to be listed under. They were kept separate from the rest of the Cyclura for a number of reasons. Later workers didn't think that that was necessary, and they lumped them all together. Anchiopsis was the name that the Navassa Island iguana finally ended up with. In 1965, I saw two of the animals after much, much, much looking. It's a tiny island. Navas is just a little bitty place, but it's got extremely rough seas around it and lots of pirates. And I don't mean the kind in Peter Pan. You take your life in your hands when you get anywhere near that island. The second time I went back there, they were gone. That was it. There were no more. And I scoured that island for almost 12 days.
Wow.
It was beyond sobering because no one would listen to me. I kept trying to get funding. I kept trying to get back to Navassa. It's not a cheap place to get to, believe me. There are a lot of plans you have to make, and you have to arrange it with the government, so they give you some backup with air surveillance, so you don't get your head blown off by the locals. By local, and I don't mean anybody who lives there. It's not an occupied island.
Okay.
But it's very close to Haiti, and the Haitian party boats, as they are called, go through that channel and through that area. Party boat means simply that these are boats that have all kinds of things tacked up on the sides and everywhere else that they've stolen from people who they have piratized, if there is such a word. Dangerous place. Very dangerous place. Likely that's what happened to the iguanas, is that the pirates just blew them apart and got rid of them, and that was it. It was over with for them.
Wow.
We could have easily saved them. Easily. Just as I marvel every day at the stupidity, and I'm not going to mince any words here tonight, the stupidity of the people working in conservation who could make things happen, get things done, and they don't do it. We don't need millions of dollars. We need a few, but a few dollars, but we don't need millions. And no one seems to approach it from a pragmatic way. They ignore so many factors. They don't do it right. I don't know. It's incredibly frustrating for me, as it has been for many years.
Yeah.
A couple other little things about the Navassa iguana, as long as we're on it. They had a much narrower head profile than any of the other rhino iguanas.
Okay.
They were distinctive. They certainly had their own place at probably at least a subspecies. I would put them in as a species with my knowledge of systematics and anatomy.
Okay.
And one of the things I want to tell everyone is I am not following the current revision of Cyclura. It's bogus and needs to be redone. I'm following the Noble and Tom of 1915. Tom Barber and Noble, G.K. Noble. They did the last revision that I trust. Damn good herpetologists, and they separated the species in a manner that made sense. The only thing that they don't list in their, well, there's two things that they don't list. They don't list Lewisii, which is the blue iguana from Grand Cayman. That's because it hadn't been discovered yet. And there's one subspecies of the Carinata, which is the Turks Island iguana, found on a completely different area that is a valid subspecies at least.
Okay.
And again, that wasn't determined until Cochrane found the animal, brought the animal back, verified that it was in fact a subspecies or possibly species of Carinata, or
So-
the Carinata group.
For those who are not aware, and I would put myself in that category, what was this revision that you have kind of your displeasures with? What was redone? And when did that happen?
They lumped all kinds of things together that they shouldn't have. First of all, there are many reasons for lumping or splitting. And I'm sure everyone has heard the terms lumpers and the splitters.
Yeah.
I tend to err on whatever seems to be best for the species in order to keep them surviving. And sometimes it requires a little tweaking to do. There are different reasons for declaring something a species or subspecies. It's not just one thing. And for God's sake, don't think that this goes to DNA. There are so many problems with DNA these days. There are so many flaws, and in so many cases, it's meaningless. Stick with systematics, stick with bone structure, stick with scalation, stick with the things that mean something, the animal's behavior, their geographic locals. It's all in there. Use all those tools to do it right. Don't just go with DNA. DNA is a badly flawed, overused thing that should be used as a tool only, not as the be-all and end-all of species classification.
Okay.
So anyhow, I originally was going to do this talk completely differently, and I'm going to take just a moment here to switch things around, because I got on the internet, but that was my first mistake, and looked at things that I had never looked at before. For the most part, I just stay off the internet because it's just so much BS. And I decided, well, let's just see what's out there about Cyclura. And after 2.5 hours of looking at meaningless tripe, I was amazed. And I'm not, anybody who just fell off the pumpkin truck, but it amazed me at how bad the information was, how beat up it was, and the people who had been involved in it. Or it was just like the Keystone Cops. If you don't know who they are, just think of well, I can't even compare. Never mind. My mind is just like sitting in boiling water right now from the stuff that I read. I could not believe one bad bunch of information after another, and a total lack of respect and interest for the animals. Oh, it's cool, man. That's an awesome animal. Well, I'm sorry. Go pound sand, buddy. We're trying to do something reasonable here, and we're trying to do something that will keep these animals alive and present. We're not running a clown show.
Yeah.
And that has nothing to do with my sense of humor, which Stephen will attest to. It's probably better and rougher than a lot of people's. But this is not part of it. We are in desperate need of protecting these animals, and not in the way they're being protected. What's been done with them is very much along the lines of AZA, which is protecting them into extinction. It's just, my God, what's wrong with these people? When are they going to wake up? When are they going to understand that there are a myriad of things that could be done and never do get even proposed, much less finished? It is frightening. It's absolutely frightening. Every species of Cyclura is endangered. No question about it. And we've already lost one, and we came damn close to losing 3. Contrary to what you will read in some places, I was actually the person who rediscovered the Jamaican iguana after it had been declared extinct. I rediscovered it in 1981 and 1982, and tried to get it through to the Jamaican government. They had to do something, and they just totally ignored me. I went to their natural history group that they had, and the fellow who was in charge, I said, I've got an announcement for you. I came in at a time when they were having a meeting, and he looked at me and said, "We don't care about any fucking lizards. We like birds." That's an exact quote, by the way. And I stood there open mouthed. It's like, I just resurrected a species for you, and you're saying you don't care about it because you're more interested in birds.
Jeez.
Yeah. Again, another one of those moments when I just couldn't believe what I was hearing.
Yeah.
Cayman Islands, when I was working over there, Kearney Gomez, who was their head guy of development and natural resources. Do you see any problem with that? Development and natural resources. We're building things, tearing your island apart. And then I'm in charge of the natural resources. And they didn't want to hear anything about Lewisai. I finally got something going, but at the expense of my reputation and a few other things. It was just awful. I gave them a suggestion sheet with, it's actually 3 or 4 pages of what they could do to save the animal and also not completely shut off the island to other people. And they just had absolutely no interest. They wanted to hear it from somebody who was a Brit, and I wasn't a Brit. So I continued on with my work. There are going to be a lot of back and forths here because you're going to get a lot of stories. A lot of things that I've done, a lot of things that I've seen. And if anyone doubts me, I don't mind. I will tell you I can back things up in most cases with either photos or film or written statements or witnesses. But what I'm telling you is the truth. I don't know how else to put it to you. And I would like you to feel free to call in or email in, whatever you do there.
Drop a live chat.
About which species. And I'll shift gears very quickly to cover them. I have had experience with every single variety of Cyclura, every one of them. I have been in their natural habitats. I have seen them. I have worked with them. I've bred many of them. Have histories on virtually all of them. Cochrane's animal is the only one I don't have any history on. And that's because there really wasn't any, because she was the person who first proposed it and discovered it. So that's that variant of Cyclura carinata.
Okay.
Have we got anybody in there on the phones or the, I keep saying from internet?
No questions in yet, but I figured throughout the episode we'll get some coming in.
Okay, but I just wanted people to understand, we really want to answer your questions. And I don't want to be talking to the wall. I want to make sure that we're addressing some of the things that need to be addressed so people understand this genus. It is a very strange genus of lizards. It's an ancient genus, and the conditions under which these animals survive are very unusual. We have never figured out why you can take 25 of them and put them in a new place that's as identical, as far as we can tell, to the place we took them out of, and they'll be gone in a day, never to be seen again. We don't know why. One of the problems I had with trying to protect the blue iguanas, the Lewisai, was that they cut a highway on the east end of Grand Cayman, and the females wouldn't cross the highway to go and nest. And this was at a time when there were probably not more than 18 or 19 of the animals total.
Wow.
Why would you take that chance and put that highway in? It's called the Queen's Highway, and they established it as some sort of honorarium to Queen Elizabeth when she visited the islands years ago. They finished up this highway that came to a dead end. I know that sounds a little strange, but anyhow, I tried to convince them that that's what happened. And you could sit there for hours and watch these animals show up. They taste it, they taste it, they taste it. If you know Cyclura, you know that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
Tongue coming out, using their really phenomenal senses of taste and smell. And then they'd back off and go away. Then they'd come back again. They have tremendous fidelity to their hatching and digging for their nests. And they try to do it in the same place every year. Same place. And if they can't get there, they're going to abort. That's the end of that. They're going to drop the eggs, and the eggs will never be where they're supposed to be and end up as food for a bird. They couldn't conceive that that was possible. And eventually they got a program going with a Brit, and the program was wildly successful in terms of producing babies, but did nothing to save habitat. And they were then getting animals crushed under cars, and this is happening today. There's no place for them. They just sold a huge area of the habitat for the blue iguana, and they sold it to an Indian company from India, and it became a sanitarium of sorts. How they could ever do that, I don't know. There was so little habitat left for these guys to begin with, and they just took the huge chunk out of it.
Wow.
And then cut another highway through between the two legs of the Queens Highway, so they have one that now goes across the island as well. And lots of nice little condominiums and things popping up along there. No place for these animals to go.
Wow, that's terrible.
It is. And I did what I could, down to the point of almost getting in trouble because I exposed some of the stuff that was going on there. Back in the 80s, the early 80s, was about the third time that I went to the Caymans, and found out that there were people smuggling Lewisii off the island, and they were doing it using U.S. mail bags, as in the United States mail bags. Nobody bothers to open the mail bags, and they tape the legs of the animal so it didn't appear to be too active. And they bring them in on single engine planes privately. And it was not unusual for the mail to be handed to whoever was going to Miami next.
Wow.
Or somewhere else.
Yeah.
But those bags were sacrosanct as far as they were concerned. And some Lewisii ended up in the United States as part of a religious group. Don't ask me to explain all of that. It's a long story, but almost none of those animals survived. They eventually just aged out or were not taken care of properly or something. It was a very, very strange situation. Weird. The guy who was doing the smuggling, I actually have some pictures of him smuggling, and I have pictures of the animals that he had stolen out of the wild. Right behind his trailer that he lived in when he was on Grand Cayman.
Jeez. Showed
him to the authorities, and nobody would do a damn thing about it.
Oh, how nice.
Lots of stories like that, and it's really unfortunate. The Caribbean became very corrupt about 1965, started to really go downhill. And it was the advent of people from the United States going down and finding it a convenient place to sell drugs from. It got ugly in a hurry, and one of my friends from the Virgin Islands, who was a gentleman who lived there all his life, and he was third generation, and he said, 20 years ago, and this is going back a long time, but 20 years ago, if you dropped your wallet on the front, meaning the area where the boats tie up, they always called it the front. He said 3 people would run, grab it, and take it back to you. He said now one person will draw a gun to see if you have any more. And it's unfortunate what's happened.
Yeah.
The people that I grew up around are gone. People who were very sensitive, decent individuals just aren't there anymore. They got roughed up and run out.
Yeah.
Okay. Where do we want to go? Give me a direction here, Stephen.
Well, I guess a good place to start would maybe just be an overview of the genus of, the variety of species. And
the problem with doing that is I'm going to have to do a whole lot of explaining. So I'm only going to do some of that to start with. I think I will start as long as we talked about the caimans. We have 2 species in the Cayman Islands. We have Lewisii, which is the blue iguana, on Grand Cayman, the only place that it's found.
Okay.
And then we have Cyclura caymanensis, which is the Cayman Island iguana, found on 2 islands, Cayman Brac and Little Cayman. Now, Cayman Brac, it's arguable as to whether or not there is a thriving population. I can't even say thriving, an existing population there.
Okay.
The last time I was there, I could only find 3 animals on the whole island.
How big is the island?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe I'd just be guessing. It's a small island, probably, like 3 by 5 miles or something like that. Okay. I may be way off on that. But they were just annihilated. The primary nesting areas became hotels and, the usual Tropicana stuff.
Yeah.
The last remaining population that was healthy was on Little Cayman. And the next thing you know, some of the people who were really landholders who protected the place for a long time, well over 100 years, started dying off and their stuff got sold. Then came the real crushing blow. Somebody brought green iguanas and let them go on the island.
Oh, shit.
And you're dealing with an apex animal that, meaning the Cyclura, apex animal that had never been challenged by anything.
Yeah.
They lived a very slow life. They reproduced slowly. They reproduced a few at a time, and all was well. It was an island setting. They were protected by the sea itself. Suddenly, it's like introducing a motorcycle gang to a kindergarten. And it was horrific. The next thing we started finding was, of course, hybrids. Virtually any of the animals that we're talking about can hybridize.
Really?
Hybridizing has virtually nothing to do with whether or not it can hybridize. Let me start this again. Hybridizing has virtually nothing to do with speciation. Okay, it shouldn't even be in the mix.
Okay.
Okay, if it's really distant relative, well then, maybe we'll split hairs on something. But generally speaking, animals that are even remotely related when it comes to reptiles and amphibians can hybridize. What keeps them from hybridizing is often behavior, location, and so like. And a lot of it has to do with pheromones as well, that the animals work with and share.
Okay.
The Cayman Island iguana is similar in build to the Cuban iguana, although there's a lot of variation in their head structures, from animal to animal. The blue iguana, and this tells you how fragmented and old their population was. Every single one of the blue iguanas that I've been able to find that were adults, I went there numerous times and caught up animals, looked at them, took photos of them, and they were so different from each other. If they hadn't all been blue, it was about the only thing that they all shared. You wouldn't have been able to figure out that they were, in fact, a single group of animals.
Interesting.
That was good because it meant that there were alleles that were not one on top of another, on top of another, on top of another.
Sure.
There were enough different alleles, sometimes called rare alleles, that it allowed that population to get going again.
Okay.
On Grand Cayman, they have a breeding facility. They produce lots of babies, and they watch lots of babies walk around very puzzled, looking for food, getting run over by cars. And it just, I cringe every time I go and see it. It's sad. It really is. It could have been done so differently, and it could have been done successfully. Instead of worrying about how many dozen you can crank out and throw out into the wild, how about studying the animal sufficiently, and at the same time breeding, and at the same time getting some sort of protection for them, and especially getting other areas to support groups of them. So we have animals in a bank, not on Grand Cayman. One disease, you'd wipe that species out in minutes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's an exaggeration, but not by a whole lot. Especially with the starting group, probably was no more than 20 animals. And likely I had found 18, I think I found 18 of the animals when I was there over a 5-year period. The different trips that I took, and I marked them with scale clips, very discreet ones, so people didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
And yeah, well, let's go back to the Caymanensis, the other one that, as I said, they look somewhat similar to Cubans. They've been lumped together with the Cubans. I disagree with that. There are a lot of reasons, again, not to lump them, but to keep them as a separate species. They're very handsome looking critters. They are pretty large. The biggest one I've ever seen was just under 4 feet in length. But as with most Cyclura, you've got to give them enough time to get big. It takes a long, long time for any of the Cyclura to become large animals. I had somebody today on the internet saying that the biggest species was the Andros Island iguana. It's not at all true. We don't know what the biggest species is or used to be because we don't have all of these 80 and 85-year-old animals anymore. They don't exist. They're gone. What I will tell you is the largest Cyclura I have ever seen was a rhino iguana that came from one of the out islands off of Hispaniola.
Okay.
And obviously a male, and it was 5.5, probably almost 6 feet long. It had one piece broken off the end of the tail, so
Holy
it probably was
that's a
legitimate
huge iguana.
it was huge, and it was built like a bulldozer.
Wow.
And
How big was that animal's head? I think it must have been
huge, absolutely huge, like the size of a big bulldog.
That's amazing. Wow.
And I know where the animal came from, and it's one of the off islands off of Hispaniola, and I'm not telling anybody where it's from. And that's part of the problem doing this talk is I want people to be aware. I don't want people rushing out to grab things up because they heard about them and they're cool. There's none of that allowable right now. We need to save these animals, and the only way we're going to save them is a united effort and people being allowed to work and do the things that will make this animal or this genus convenient to bring back. They're protected, but what the hell does that do? Every fisherman who goes out kills an iguana to have supper. That's an exaggeration, but it's often how they end up. Having all those laws for what? There's nobody to enforce them. And, every once in a great while, they catch somebody who's almost always a foreigner because they're the ones who are too dumb to avoid the police. They make a big deal of it in the paper, and then that's it. It's over with. In the meantime, 30 iguanas have just been killed.
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way. And as I have said for all too long, education, not legislation, is the key to environmental success. End of story.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay. The Cayman Island iguana, the Cyclura caymanensis, size-wise, doesn't get quite as big as the Cuban. Biggest one that I've seen was probably 39 inches, 40 inches.
Okay.
There are tail segments missing on a lot of Cyclura because of where they live. This was another one that I saw in a video today where the rather lame-brained individual kid couldn't even get the type of substrate straight, calling it coral. It had nothing to do with coral. It's something called iron shore, and iron shore is the livelihood of the Cyclura. Iron shore is a very, very, very strange mineral composite, and it turns out like razor sharp. It's something you have to learn to walk on so you don't kill yourself. And I was doing iron shore hopping when I was like 2 years old or 3 years old. I got my share of cuts, but I didn't get killed, which was
As is evident by the podcast today.
it's evident. Yeah, at least I think it was not successful in killing me. But anyhow, it just reminded me of that ridiculous film, like Bozo the Clown. Now Bozo had some class. So anyhow, let's move on. But if any of these animals are grabbing your fancy and you want to know something, please call. Cyclura live much longer than any of the other iguanas that we know of. They are old animals, meaning they are ancient animals. A lot of the stuff that people have surmised about them has been incorrect, based on half-truths and bits and pieces, and also based on who had a grad student that needed a project, and let's give him a Cyclura to deal with.
Yeah.
You know, well, woe is us after that. We go to Cuba. The Cuban iguana is probably the last self-sustaining population that I would say is still in good shape all in all. They're protected by the U.S. base that's down there in Cuba. The people feed them all the time. I'm not saying that's a good thing, but it's better than them not being there. The Cuban iguana, like all the rest of the Cyclura, is very poorly understood. And there are animals on almost all of the outlying islands of Cuba, and there are differences among those animals. I've seen probably 15, 18 different places where they didn't look the same as the ones on the mainland, or the large island, the main island. I'd love to have the money to be able to go in and start doing work on these animals and doing blood work and everything else necessary to ascertain how closely related these animals really are.
Yeah.
The problem that we run into in Cuba is that the people are so poor that anything that moves gets eaten. And even though the Cubans are very involved in conservation in their own way, you can't fill your stomach on knowledge. And unfortunately, they're getting no help from anyone.
Yeah.
If we allowed Cuba to have some food and decent living conditions and just leave them alone, they'd probably be a whole lot happier and better off than we leave them.
Yeah.
There is a healthy population of Cuban iguanas that's an invasive population off the coast of Puerto Rico. An island off the coast of Puerto Rico. How they got there was very simple. The U.S. Air Force had flights all over the Caribbean, just as they do now. But the guys would bring their favorite pet with them, and sometimes that was a Cuban iguana.
Okay.
They got into the Vieques, and man, they just multiplied, and they did incredibly well, and the people didn't bother them. The Puerto Ricans didn't have a whole lot to say about them, and they just sort of ignored them. And some of the women even would put out little dishes for them to come and get something to eat. Which brings me to a different topic, but one that I think is very important. One of the things that make the Cyclura desirable for people to have as pets or what have you is the fact they're very dog-like. And you and I have discussed that before.
Yeah.
All the Cyclura, to one extent or another, will tame down and become very dog-like. There are two exceptions to that I'm not going to go into right at this moment. but that's unfortunately to the detriment of the animals. I'm not against having them in captivity. What I'm against is this selectiveness that occurs. If people are going to do that, they should be donating to a central fund for that particular species. That should be part of what ownership would be. The next thing is private people should be keeping stud books. Not because they have to, but because they should.
Yeah.
And they could be the most valuable thing imaginable when it comes. The Cycluras, other than another two examples, all of them except for two are relatively easy to breed in captivity. And there's no reason why we couldn't be cranking them out, but doing it the right way and returning animals, at least half of what's produced, back to the islands that they're from.
Yeah.
And doing it in an appropriate manner where we're scanning them for illness and so forth before they're allowed to go back, so that we don't wipe out the population. It could be done. We've got millions of people in this country, and these people could be marshaled up to do this. They'd be part of a specific saving group, and the reward they'd have is they could work with the animals and have the joy of reproducing them, and the net result would be hundreds, if not thousands, of these animals available for reestablishment.
Yeah.
The Cyclura used to be found on probably 3 times as many islands as they are right now, including Puerto Rico. The largest species of Cyclura that we know of is an extinct animal from Puerto Rico. And they were probably about 6 feet, maybe 6.5 feet long.
Wow. And just overdevelopment just outcompeted them essentially.
What happened to them was the early Indians, probably the Arawaks and the others, that came in and wiped them out.
Wow.
When they're that big, there aren't going to be very many of them.
Yeah.
And the Cyclura are always marginal animals because their habitat is so rare, so incredibly rare. The Hellshire Hills in Jamaica is a perfect example of that. There's a reason they call it the Hellshire Hills, and that's the very reason that the Cyclura thrive in it when they're allowed to stay alive and not get shot for somebody's supper. And by the way, for the note, I was the person who rediscovered that species. Did I say that already? I don't know.
I don't think you. I think we did.
I don't think I did, but
You told me before.
yeah, they try to claim that it was some pig hunter. The pig hunter that they're talking about was looking. Yeah, I was talking about my fun with the Haitian group who only wanted birds. But anyhow, sorry, I didn't mean to repeat myself.
No worries.
But nobody wanted to listen. Said I didn't know what I was talking about. They were all gone. End of story. There are 2 islands off the coast of Jamaica, Big Goat and Little Goat Island. And at one time, they had healthy populations of Cyclura, then known as Cyclura lymphoma. Now it's known as Cyclura colii, the Jamaican iguana. And they got wiped out by servicemen who didn't have anything better to do, so they would kill iguanas. And a lot of it was done by U.S. service people. Cyclura carinata, the Turks and Caicos Cyclura were just plain wiped off the map because of the air bases that were there. And another thing I was just reading is that these are tiny animals, as Cyclura go. That is absolutely false. The carinata used to get to be at least 3.5 feet length, possibly 4. There were some very large animals.
Wow.
But they took a long time to get there. There's also a very interesting phenomenon with them. I'll go into that later if we talk about food needs and what happens to them when they get moved around. Okay, let's stop for a moment here and think about what we can do to try to develop a pragmatic situation for these animals. It can't just be academicians. It can't just be people with ESA. We need the general public involved.
Yeah.
And that's not just for Cyclura, that's for all the animals. We need to start understanding what these animals mean, how incredible it is to just be able to work with one and handle one. That's an enormous reward.
Yeah, for sure.
When I brought the first Cyclura out of the Virgin Islands, it was an amazing thing. I ended up getting shipwrecked, and again, all kinds of craziness happened. I could have lost my life about 6 times, and that's only a slight exaggeration. But working with these guys, it has always been the reward for me, learning about what they really are, learning how they operate, learning about what they should eat, what they can eat. There's somebody who has a few of the Anagadan iguanas, and he can't get them to breed to save his life. I was breeding those back in 1968 and 69 and 70. And I re-released a number of them back into the wild. Wow. And also 2 other islands. They survived on one, they didn't survive on the other one. But that was just me, I was just a kid working hard, trying to do something, trying to make a difference. And I did have my successes. And one of them was learning about the dietary needs. The Anagadian iguanas require things that none of the other ones need in the kind of quantity that the Anagadians need. And one of them is salt. And we're not talking table salt. You need what we call wet sea salt, because everything they eat is coated in a layer of salt. Nobody ever thinks about that.
Yeah.
And you got to be very careful, because you can overdose with salt very easily. So you got to find the median and know what you're doing with it. But they, for the most part, they will not breed or successfully breed without having a sufficient wet salt addition to their diet. The wet salts will have a mineral profile that will include anywhere from 65 to 85 different minerals in that wet salt. That's phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. They can't get it anywhere else. And it's something that they evolved a need for.
So in the wild, what are they primarily eating?
It's different everywhere you go.
Okay.
If you had to ask me for one thing that I know that all of them eat, it's called sea grapes, found along the edges of the shores.
Okay.
And they're a bitter, hard grape. And I would say that I can't think of any species that did not eat the sea grapes. But the others, it would depend upon what was available to them, and they would get very, very picky about what they ate and how they ate it. The animals that are on islands where people feed them, they got little boats going out to feed them. Those animals get to be pretty cosmopolitan as far as their food. They'll eat almost anything, Okay. I'm sure they've had popcorn, and I'm sure they've had other highly nutritious bits of fluff like cotton candy, all those necessities. They only eat the blue ones.
Yep.
But there are a lot of other things you need to know about Cyclura. They have a much greater protein need than the green iguanas. They eat in spurts, and some of the species browse every day, where they will go out for an hour and eat like crazy and then stop, and then eat like crazy and stop. Some of them eat on a regular basis and just stick their head out and grab a few leaves, and as soon as they're hungry, go a little further on the leaves, and so on and so forth. There's so many differences in the different populations, and they've sort of accommodated. But what we can't figure out is why, when you take these animals, like I did with the Anagadian iguanas, the one island that I put them on, that they have now successfully gotten a good foothold and been breeding very well, is virtually identical to the other island I put them on, and they're within a few miles of each other. It just doesn't make sense, but they don't like it and they don't survive it. Couldn't find anything disease-wise that happened. Couldn't find anything that was competing with them. Just don't know. They need a lot more study, good study.
Yeah.
Not bozo with a pencil. We need somebody, we need some good, tough naturalists out there who don't mind getting their fingers dirty and getting a few mosquito bites, and people who can sit there and really watch for days at a time and figure out what's going on with these very, very strange lizards. And, they are the biggest lizards in the New World. Although there are people who would say a large tegu might be heavier, but those are captive specimens that got stuffed with enormous amounts of food to achieve what they do.
Sure.
But generally speaking, they are the largest of all lizards in the New World, at least certain species. Who should we go to next? Pick one.
Well, before we do that, let me hit a couple questions from the chat.
Sure.
So what is their average lifespan? Amy is asking.
We don't know is the right answer. I can tell you that if nothing happens to them, that all of them will probably live 60 years or more.
Okay.
I know of animals, personal experience, that have lived over 80 years. They're remarkable creatures. They really are. Green iguana, 15 to 17 years. Think about it. Live fast and die young.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they only breed every 2 or 3 years.
Okay.
Again, they're in an island setting. They're not going to overpopulate themselves and use up all their resources. So they have small numbers of eggs in the nest, and they only breed. You can, with the green iguanas, you can get 3 clutches out of them in a year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like rabbits. And I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, definitely.
And if there's any more you want to know about that, please just type it back and we'll answer it right away.
So here's another question. Brooke wants to know, do cornuta ever eat animal protein in the wild? And if so, what are they consuming? And is it greater than 5% of their diet, if so?
Absolutely. They eat it as often as they can get a hold of it.
Okay.
They take a lot of insects, especially when they're smaller. They raid terrestrial birds. They'll raid their nests, and birds that nest in the scrublands, they'll get up there and get the eggs out, and they'll take the chicks, the babies. Any small rodent they're fast. Let me tell you, the Cyclura are very fast, and as ungainly as they may look when they run, you'll never keep up with them, not even close.
Yeah.
They can catch stuff, so they'll lay their teeth on anything they can get down when it comes to protein, because protein is relatively scarce.
Sure. So with that being said, how would you...
what was the other part? He asked something else that I didn't answer at the very end.
Oh, she wanted to know if it's greater than 5% of their
Greater
diet.
than 5%, yeah. That is totally dependent upon what's available.
Sure.
What I tell people who are trying to be successful, especially for breeding rhino iguanas, at least once every 2 weeks, throw them a small rat or, obviously a dead animal, fresh frozen, or a mouse or something like that. Chicks, same thing, they do well.
Okay. And do you only do that during breeding, or would you include protein in the general year-long diet?
Definitely general. leaning a little more toward the chicks because of the omegas that the poultry have in them.
Okay.
Helps in the egg production.
Okay. Makes sense. So for like an adult female rhino iguana per se, on, let's say a weekly basis, what kind of animal protein would you feed an animal like that?
Well, I wouldn't feed them weekly. I'd feed them every other week at the most.
Okay.
And again, I'd vary it.
Sure.
Just like it happens in the wild. Sometimes
Right.
you give it to them, sometimes you don't. Sometimes it's big, sometimes it's small.
Cool.
Things survive much better that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
And by the way, I wanted to thank our listeners, our watchers. Please don't be shy. Get out there and ask the questions. If I've got the answer, I'll tell you. And if I don't know the answer, I'll tell you where to go and get it. And if I don't know where to go and get it, it'll be a mystery for both of us.
Very nice. So then she asked this follow-up. Then would quail eggs be okay? I assume that they would be.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a natural. That's a ground-dwelling bird. So they're a great egg for them.
Great. And then she asked another follow-up. She asked if the cornuta and riccardi have fairly identical diets since they are in a similar geographic area.
No, they don't.
Okay.
Boy, riccardi is an outlier.
Okay.
I've never figured it out. I don't know anyone who has figured it out. We don't know where they came from. They are so different from the group that the cornuta is in. The Metapocerus group, which is the rhinos, is utterly different. And riccardi doesn't look really like any of the other Cyclura. We have some anecdotal evidence that they may live even longer than some of the others. Wow. But they're very strange lizards. I hate to keep saying that, they're all strange, but the riccardi, how the hell do they live sympatrically with the rhinos? That makes no sense. And why wouldn't one evolve more toward the other? Because of the very nature of the pressures around them.
Sure.
Doesn't happen. And the riccardi have never been very populous. There haven't been many of them.
Yeah.
And if they got old, they got big. The biggest riccardi I've ever seen was an animal that I got in I remember this guy, 1967. And he was every bit of 4 feet long.
Wow.
That's a big
lizard.
That's a big lizard and a very heavy one. They're very, very, very flighty animals. The rhinos are much easier going. The riccardi are very nervous, incredibly nervous. They will, if you're not really careful when you bring them into captivity, they will beat themselves half to death trying to get out and get away. You have to be very careful with them, pad them up, and then bit at a time start working with them to habituate them and get them calmed down. But they're always extremely nervous animals.
Interesting. Do they, I mean, I would assume probably not based on your description, but are they hybridizing in the wild? The
no,
cornuta?
That's an absolute mystery.
Yeah.
Could they? Of course they could. And I've got several photos that came from the 1920s of ricards and rhinos within sight of each other browsing.
Interesting.
Yeah. I have no idea. They claim that ricards used to live in Haiti as well, just on the east end of Haiti. I have no proof for that, but I've heard that rumor from a number of the old timers.
Okay. Interesting.
And they usually knew what they were talking about.
Yeah. So then what is the difference in their diet in the wild?
From what I can tell, they are less herbivorous than the rhinos and more dependent on protein.
Interesting.
Yeah. And they also, rhinos have quite a sweet tooth. Doesn't mean it's good for them. just like human beings. You love it, you love it, you love it. It's bad for you, bad for you, bad for you.
Yeah.
But the Reichardt's iguanas don't seem to have the sweet tooth.
Okay. Interesting.
And again, that doesn't mean they won't eat it if it's there. And I want to throw this one out right away. Bananas, no bueno. None of the Cyclura should get bananas except as a treat occasionally.
Okay. Interesting.
Things can happen that you don't want.
What, from an overdose of potassium?
No, but what happens is the potassium binds with what? Sodium, right?
Sure.
So you start losing some of your trace elements.
Huh. Okay.
And
So it
then
has like an inverse reaction that you'd want to. It starts to kind of like clear the
Yeah.
system, some of those minerals.
And the other thing that it does is the sweets in it are really hard on their kidneys. Bananas have a very cloying effect on the kidneys if you're a Cyclura.
Wow. Okay.
Got to be careful with that. They love bananas. They'll gobble them down.
There you go. Absolutely nuts. So then, I mean, how
Yeah.
frequently would you, obviously, as like on a treat basis, like a couple times a year, how frequently would you include a banana?
I wouldn't do it more than once a month, and I'd only give them like a couple slices or something.
Okay. Interesting.
You're always much safer with the Cyclura if you keep them on a relatively dry diet of, but by dry I'm not talking necessarily about lack of moisture, but things that have dry leaves, some of the heavier duty green leaf vegetables. You can err on the side of that and not hurt anything. If you start putting the wrong things together, you can hurt something. But again, variety is absolutely a wonderful thing for them. And just keep rotating it around and you won't kill your animal.
So with Cyclura, would you be worried about feeding too much of collard greens, kale, spinach for the oxalic acid content?
No, it doesn't bother them in the least.
Okay.
That one I can tell you both from experience and from watching them in the wild.
Okay.
They eat a lot of hard-leafed veggies.
Okay.
And the oxalic acid appears in a lot of things in their diet. They eat stuff that would poison us. At the Crazy's place, in, as I call it, in Grand Cayman, they didn't realize it, but a couple of highly poisonous plants started growing in one of the pens where they were raising up some of the babies, and they were just chomping away at it. And if we had eaten one of the leaves, we would have been dead the next day.
Wow.
Amazing.
Crazy. Huh. Fascinating.
Yeah.
They are such strange.
So, and again, we don't know. There's so much we don't know about these animals.
Yeah.
And they're not green iguanas. Nothing about them is like the green iguanas. There's a reason why those combs are on their feet.
Yeah. It's amazing how different they are.
It is.
So you've alluded a couple of times to their habitat type in the wild is pretty uncommon. What exactly is their habitat type? What kind of what is that biome that they're seeking to make them thrive?
They almost always come from a place where they have a jungle atmosphere, but it's usually heavy, thorny brush, and the rock. And there's always sand, but the rock that's found is the Iron Shore rock. They evolved around the Iron Shore rock, and the islands that have Iron Shore rock only have it in some areas.
Okay.
Only a few of the islands are completely made of hang on, I'm about to sneeze here.
No worries.
Oh, sorry, everyone. Don't want to take out the night here. there are 2 islands that I can think of that are solid iron shore.
Okay.
Yeah. And they tend to stay there. The females on Grand Cayman used to do most of their digging for their nests in potholes in these heavily proprietary rock situations. You know, they'd find a hole and they'd kick the sand around, lay the eggs, kick some more sand over it, and essentially use it like a big vase.
That's so cool.
It was amazing.
Wow.
Absolutely amazing.
Interesting. So are they pretty much hugging the shoreline through their entire life, or how far inland will they go?
No, they'll go as far inland as they can.
Okay.
In most cases, if the habitat is right. Now, that brings us to another comment about, well, most of the habitat is pretty close to the
Sure. I mean, if
to the
it's a
shore.
3-mile by 5-mile island,
Yeah.
you can't get too far inland in any direction.
Right. And you know, I have sat and watched these animals so many times, just sitting there marveling at what they do and the interactions. They fight, especially the males. They start getting into breeding mode, and you know, the gloves come off and they fight like crazy. In a good population, that doesn't make all that much difference if one of them gets killed here or there.
Yeah.
But when you're dealing with a population of less than 20 animals, you got to be very careful.
Yeah.
Very, very careful.
So then how would you do that from a population management standpoint? Would you just do your best to spread those males as far from each other as you can, or what would the process of that be?
I wouldn't spread them away from each other too much. I'd just make sure they didn't have access to each other, because they'll kick up each other's pheromones by being close.
Yeah. Okay.
And that would also stimulate the females.
Yeah.
And
competition, but without any actual fear of them hurting.
Without actual competition, yeah, without physical confrontation.
Okay, makes sense.
They are, you know, if you look at the green iguana, they're pretty dumb. You know, to be really flat out, and I'm not trying to break anybody's heart. If you've got a green iguana that you enjoy, wonderful, good for you. But they're nothing compared to these guys. But these guys also are so susceptible to getting run out of town by the green iguanas, because the green iguanas do everything so fast. They steal, they do, you name it, they do it.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of like somebody's bad puppets. And the Cyclura are nowhere near like that. They're solitary. In healthy populations, they're solitary, except during breeding.
Okay.
And you know, when you see some of these old pictures of animals laying on the beach, that's when the population starts to get high, and there are things that happen that back those populations off, and then they start again.
Okay. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. And what time of the year is their natural breeding season?
Depends upon the island.
Okay.
And it depends upon what the weather's been like. But they're usually laying eggs in June, July, sometimes May.
Okay.
Breeding takes place at other times and other points. Like so many other reptiles, they seem to have at least some control over when the ova are fertilized.
Okay.
Who knows on that one? We don't understand it in snakes, and we don't understand it in anything else. All we know is that it happens. And now we're finding out that some turtles do it too.
Yeah. Wow.
You know, can we just sit back for a moment and think about the stuff that I've been saying and talking about, and how fantastic it is if you just sit back and look at the ceiling and say, these animals are capable of all this stuff. Not only do we not understand it, but they're going to be extinct before we ever have a chance at understanding it. Let's not do that again.
Yeah.
Let's not ever do that again. And let's do what we can to give these animals a chance for survival.
Yeah.
These wonderful ancient creatures that are incredible to look at, incredible to watch, and necessary parts of our environment. Islands where they've been wiped off of have changed completely, and not for the better.
Yeah. That's terrible.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's why conversations like this are so important, you know, just to.
They are, but people also have to get off their butts and do something.
Yeah.
And, you know, supporting HSUS is not what we're talking about. If I may throw a jibe in there.
Always.
What we need to do is we need to start forming groups of what they're now calling citizen scientists. I don't like the name, but the idea is a great one. People who are willing to commit time and effort, sometimes a lot, sometimes a little, depending upon their own personal circumstances, but sincere effort.
Yeah.
What we could do is remarkable, but we need groups of people to do it with. And we also need the people who are making the laws wake up and understand what you do to create healthy populations, what you do to breed these animals correctly. You know, everybody's getting the thylacine slapped in their face now. Look what you've done, look what you've done. Well, yeah, look what you've done. But we're doing that to everything, not just the thylacines.
Right.
The silacines just happen to not be there anymore, or at least so they think.
Allegedly.
But why can we not back up and become the thinking animals that we're supposed to be and utilize that extremely rare thing, critically endangered? It's called critical thinking.
That is the most critically endangered.
Human beings do not seem to be able to grasp that anymore.
No.
And I will beat that to death, and especially with logic being involved as well. If we could start teaching people that, if we could start instilling that in people and making them understand how things work, the dynamics that occur. There are such complex dynamics in animals, their relationship to the environment, their relationships to us. And your own dog, if you've got a great little dog that you are happily in love with, think for a moment, back up and watch that animal and try to decide if you really know what they're doing or why they're doing something. Some cases you're right, some cases you're wrong. Find out. Find out what you can. Learn about that dog. If you've got reptiles, hey man, all the better.
Yeah.
I have very vivid memories of when I was a little bitty kid sitting there watching Cyclura and thinking, you know, it doesn't get any better than this. I'd give them names, and they'd sense that I was pretty much harmless, and it didn't take long before they'd come over and sit with me and lap some salt off my skin. They do.
Yeah.
Once they learn it.
I've experienced it firsthand.
Yep. Come over and lick a little salt off you.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's not a kiss, but it's certainly a sign of trust.
Yeah, sure. If they were any sort of wary about you, they're not getting.
They're not getting over. Yeah. No salt for me today, thank you, sir.
We have a question from the chat. Another one from Brooke. So, with Cyclura having long lifespans, do they reproduce for the majority of their life into the 40s or 50s, or is their breeding prime more to their teens or in 20s?
I hate to say this again, but we don't know. And that's a question. That's an excellent question. And it's one that I've been trying to answer myself. But it requires long-term involvement by more than just one person.
Sure.
And boy, whoever Brooke is it a guy or a gal?
No, you met her. She was with me at Schaumburg a few years ago. Okay.
I just want to thank her for the questions, because these are very insightful, and it gives me some direction when I do this another time of things that people wanted to hear and things that I hadn't frankly woven into it. Please keep calling, keep asking, keep texting us, whatever you're doing. The more the merrier. And these are really fine questions, really fine. Thank you.
Absolutely. So, I mean, what is I guess to maybe put it in a bit more of a succinct form, what is the oldest Cyclura that you personally have gotten eggs from?
Again, most of them I just have to guess on the age. Unless they were animals that were born in captivity, that's a different story. But then they haven't been around me for 40 or 50 years. I know of an old gentleman who lived in the trying to remember there's an island group where Carinata was found. It escapes me at the moment, but he used to breed them just because he liked to do that. But of course, he was from a place where they were found, so he'd just have an outdoor pen. He swore that he had animals that were in their 60s and 70s that were still breeding. I had a Steinengeri female who was so old that her crust was worn almost completely off of her body. And you could see she was a really old lizard.
Wow.
And she was a slightly larger than average female. And you just looked at her and all you could think of is, you're one hell of a great grandma. I don't know for sure how old she was, but in my experience, I knew her for at least 40 years.
Wow. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. But again, it's like people ask me about the anacondas and
yeah,
how long can they breed? We don't know. We've never done any of this work, and we don't keep them under optimum conditions either.
Right.
That's another very important bit of it. As you and I have discussed only too many times about nutrition and its effect on reproduction and so on, it makes so many different things go out the window.
Yeah.
Science is only as good as reality. And we've lost reality, I think, in most cases.
No question.
Yeah.
There's another, here, since we're at this point, there's a really good question in the chat I want to get to, but we're a little late to hit our commercial break. So we're going to do that real quick. So sit tight, everybody. We'll be back in a few minutes with another really awesome part of the conversation.
Sorry for the interruption, folks, but a quick word from our sponsors. Green tree pythons, emerald tree boas, and plenty other arboreal snakes have been quite the popularity here at the Trap Talk Reptile Network, which brings me to today's sponsor, the Reptile Perch. Head over to thereptileperch.com and Reptile Perch on Instagram. See what type of design PVC perch is best for your arboreal reptile. But first and foremost, I would also check out David Brom's Green Tree Python availability on the website. And you can also check out his Instagram just to stay current on any projects or any productions that he posts. Thank you so much, David Broms, for your ongoing support. Looking forward to seeing what you have to show in the 2025 season. When you think about building a good community and being a leader of that community, nobody comes to mind better than Mark Hager over at Texas Chondros. That's right. Make sure you head over to TX Chondros on Instagram and also head over to Mark's website. See what he has available Green Tree Python wise and be ready for quite the 2025 Green Tree Python breeding season out of Mark Hager. He's a veteran in the Green Tree Python game, one of the best and nicest breeders in the Green Tree Python game. He's been putting on the whole state of Texas for as long as I've known him. So if you want to see all the amazing other chondro keepers out of the state of Texas, another good reason to go follow Mark Hager over at TX Chondros on Instagram. And again, head over to his website, texaschondros.com. You can find all the links in the description below. Thank you so much, Mark Hager, for supporting the Trap. Treat. One of the biggest growths we have in the reptile industry today are the rare species of reptiles that aren't worked with. That's right. That's why I went ahead and partnered up again with Brian Susan over at SUNDOWN Reptiles. Brian works with species such as kahua geckos, gargoyle geckos, all species of tree monitors. He works with abronia and many other cool species geckos that you can check out all on his website. Head over to sundownreptiles.com, see what he has available. Brian's one of the best doing it in the reptile industry today. He's been on the show multiple times, so make sure you check out all of Brian Susan's episodes on Trap Talk Reptile Network. But more importantly, for the highest quality of captive bred reptiles, make sure you head over to sundownreptiles.com and make sure you give him a follow on Instagram. Thank you again, Brian Susan over at SUNDOWN Reptiles. One of the things I love about being a part of the reptile industry is all the learning, okay? Learning can be fun, and I can prove that to you. Thank you so much to today's sponsor, it's Gary Scavino over at gs.reptiles. I highly recommend you head over to his YouTube channel, follow all this man's content when it comes to learning about rare species of snakes you could be keeping in the hobby, and also just finding out how easy a lot of these rare species of snakes are to keep in general. So thank you so much, Gary Scavino of GS Reptiles. Again, head over to his YouTube channel. Also head over to his Instagram to be on top of all of his current work and be ready for a big year over at GS Reptiles. Thank you so much, Gary, for your ongoing support. I really appreciate it. Chee!
Alrighty, we are back. Some good comments to hit here, but before we kind of switch the topic, I want to go to another follow-up that Brooke just put in the chat. So she asks if their clutch size seems to reduce at all with age, or do they have pretty consistently similar clutches throughout their life?
We don't know. I hate to keep saying that, but if you're going to be honest about it, we don't know. If I had to just take a stab in the dark based on my experience, their clutches seem to stay pretty consistent, but it's more related to what nutrition is available to them than anything else.
Okay.
And some of it's also weather. I have a request for you.
Okay.
At the very end, may I do a commercial of my own?
By all means.
There's a reason for doing it now, and I want to go into what I've been doing the past month and a half.
Okay.
But I'd like to do that.
Sure.
If that's allowable, love to throw it in there. Brooke, my personal experience tells me that the food supply is more important than anything else, and that they're reproducing about the same through adulthood until they're ready to just, collapse into a pile of bones. That's what I have seen.
Okay.
If anyone has seen otherwise, I'd like to know about it. If anybody's got information that's verifiable, I'm more than happy to take it and run with it. Don't send me what you thought was something and what your aunt believed was going on. But if you got hard facts and good data, I would just adore it. Anything I can get to further what we know about these animals. They're just incredibly complex creatures, not just the Cyclura, but everything, all of them.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Doesn't have to be a gorilla to be an incredibly complicated animal.
No question. So this is another question we have here, kind of switches gears. So how have bans on keeping most Cyclura helped them with the amount of Cubans and rhinos out there, and now a lot more Rickardi? Says I don't see how having them in private collections in the U.S. wouldn't help. It's not as much bans as it is just we don't really have the population of some of these species in captivity, right? Or is it bans on exports?
The bans on Cyclura depend upon the species, but I'm not sure I understand the first part of that question.
Well, so I think that what I'm kind of getting here is, I guess to maybe even bring it back further to how a lot of these animals are even here to begin with. I guess a good way to start this off would be, why are there lots of rhino iguanas and Cuban iguanas, but then, he listed out a handful of these species down here: Carinata, Pinguis, Riley, etc. Why are there so few of these other Cyclura species in the U.S. trade? Why so many Cubans and rhinos? Why not as many of the other types?
Well, the ones that are protected by the ESA, which are almost all of them, that immediately stops you from doing anything with these animals unless you're going to do it for absolutely free. No remuneration, not even for the food that you put into them or anything else.
Mm-hmm.
It makes no sense. It makes no sense. But as far as why there are so few in captivity, I can tell you that over the years, most of the species have made their way into captivity once in a while, and they usually got snapped up by the feds. I'm holding a couple that were turned into me by the feds that they confiscated, and for the life of me, I don't know why they confiscated them, but they did. They're quite a group. I'm not overtly accusing them of anything, but what I'm saying is they're just not part of the program. They're not doing what they need to do. They're not being directed the way they need to be directed. And they're following programs and protocols that are ancient history and have no business in modern keeping and modern conservation.
Yeah.
They're still in the dark ages. It's not the individual agent's fault. It's the whole system that, just doesn't make any sense. It's idiotic, absolutely idiotic. Get away from the RoboCop idea. We don't need any more cops. What we need are people who are seriously involved with these creatures, and they will squeeze out the rogues. So if suddenly over a 10-year period, we're producing 800 Rycords iguanas a year, there's going to be a Rycords iguana in every city and then some. And if it's done well, and if people are signing on in order to get these animals, and they have to keep them in a particular way, and just like they do with thoroughbred dogs, purebred dogs, if you don't want it any longer, you turn it back over to the authority. The authority would be whoever was running that particular species at the time.
Yeah.
And that authority would not just be one person.
Yeah.
So these animals would be recycling back into the correct hands.
I've heard of something like that happening with one of these species. I'm not sure if I'm at liberty to speak about it publicly, but I've actually heard of like that same exact kind of structure with one very uncommon species of Cyclura in the U.S. It's a really interesting way to do it, but frankly, it creates a ton of accountability. So often you see one particular hobbyist has a breakthrough breeding of something, and they just kind of sell them willy-nilly here and there, and then it's like it never happened to begin with. Those animals just get lost in the wind. Yeah,
that's absolutely true. Figgin's Eye, which is a beautiful Cyclura, and by the way, is absolutely a full species, Cyclura Figgin's Eye. They're gorgeous, gorgeous animals. For years, everything we knew about them came from a single stuffed one at the Chicago Museum.
Really?
We didn't know much of anything else about them. We didn't even know if they still were at the same island. And if so, what did they eat? How big did they get? And it turns out they're extremely colorful animals. The one that was stuffed was a female, and we could have done so much. There's a German gentleman who has been breeding them in captivity, which is really difficult in Germany. He's committed a whole room to them and done a just wonderful job of putting things together. I'm in contact with him rarely, but I can tell you he's really a good man.
That's great.
He has produced babies, I think, 4 times now.
Wow.
And this is in a house in a cold climate. If he can do that, why the hell aren't a lot of other people in this situation doing it? And they wouldn't allow any of them to come into the United States.
From Germany?
We're from Germany.
As their ESA.
That and the fact that they claim they couldn't prove where they came from originally, the adults, which is complete bullshit. I'm sorry, but that it really was. It was just another one of the we'll trick you into something or another.
Right.
But his animals are in terrific shape. I'm not sure where he got them from, but I don't care. Think of what the guy's doing, for God's sake.
Yeah.
You know, he's made many breakthroughs in this, and the Figgins eye, for a couple of reasons, are one of the more difficult ones to breed in captivity.
Why is that?
It seems to be behaviorally.
Okay.
In the wild, they'll repopulate an island if given a chance, but in captivity, they are finicky.
Interesting.
I know that's not a scientific term, but it sort of covers it. Yeah.
Huh. Interesting. Okay.
But I mean, this fellow put his entire heart and soul into what he was doing. There are people like that, and these are the people who should have these animals, and these are the people who should be going out and talking about these animals.
Yeah.
And be allowed to do what they do, and don't charge them, $3 million for permits. The guy's doing a service to the planet.
Yeah.
Help him.
Yeah, 100%. Brooke has another good question here. So I assume she's referring to in the wild, but do all Cyclura pretty much exist at similar temperature and humidity levels, or does it sometimes vary based on geography?
It does vary based on geography. And one of the things that I was surprised at over the years is how cold it gets on some of the islands that are at the north part of the ranges.
Interesting. How cold does it get?
Well, in the 40s.
Wow.
Yeah, overnight.
Would never have guessed.
Yeah. And if they have certain things, they seem to be able to withstand that much more than I would have given them a chance at. And again, I'd love to see some work done with it.
Yeah.
Figure out what their optimums are, and then figure out what their maximums are. Yeah. But that's another very good. Thank you, Brooke, for another very good question.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, they really I think kind of what you've been saying throughout. Some people, I think, overlook them by comparing them to, whether it be green iguanas or, even Tenosaura or something like that. They really are nothing like any other. Iguana is it's a bad word almost to even classify them as.
I was just going to say, you can drop the iguana and you have a much better description of what you're, the giant rock lizards.
Yeah, Caribbean giant rock lizards.
Yeah. I'm just going to throw something out there and see if anybody bites on this one. If you look at the distribution of the extant species of Cyclura, and you follow it until you get closer to South America and, down into the Antilles and so forth, what takes over? It's a particular type of now scarce green iguana. If you looked at it, you'd say, Mama must have been a Reichord's iguana or something like it.
Yeah, I would assume you're referring to the Delicatissima.
Yep. Which is actually, there's more than one group of those.
Okay.
Again, nothing has been done with them that has been meaningful.
Yeah.
But then if you look a little further, you get to the Tenosaurs, right? Get into Central America and Mexico and so forth, the Tenosaurs. And you look at them and say, Uncle Jim must have been Cyclura.
Yeah.
And then you think about it and you get to the other side of the place, and you get off onto the Galapagos Islands and you take a look at the Galapagos land iguanas. The sea iguanas I don't even want to throw into the mix here because they are so specialized.
Yeah.
But the Galapagos land iguanas, they look like Aunt Harriet made out with the plumber. Well, what am I trying to say is that I have a suspicion. This is not anything more than a suspicion at this point. I have a suspicion that much of what has been documented about the historical origins needs to be retuned on these guys.
Okay.
I really do. And another reason why, let me just bring this up. As I said, I only wanted to work out of one book here, and that is something that came from the bulletin of the Museum of Comparative Biology, or Zoology, sorry, Comparative Zoology from 1915. And it's called the, maybe I get this right here, A Revision of the Lizards of the Genus Cyclura, Barbara Noble. They justify everything they put in there. There are photographs, very early photographs, and good information, especially based on what they had or what they didn't have. And they've got some pictures of animals that obviously they're all dead and they're all preserved in one manner or another, but you get an idea that they saw animals that were a lot older than many of the other groups that we've seen come out since then.
Okay.
So they saw some of the really seminal stuff. Another reason to respect what they did. And then the conservation issue. If something is a subspecies, it does not get the protection that a species gets. Just doesn't. There's a whole bunch of reasons for that.
Okay.
If we give them full species recognition, that alone should be sufficient reason to give them a identification of a full species, to protect them as a species.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people don't like to hear that, but we're at a point right now where we don't have a choice.
Well, at the end of the day, whatever you call them doesn't change what they are, so you might as well preserve what
Exactly.
they are. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I can talk about these animals for weeks on end. And that's why I really like getting these questions from the folks on the internet.
You got a few more if you want to hit them.
Lay it on me.
All right. We'll just go down the line in order how they came in. So Amy has another question, kind of open-ended, but what's the best way to keep Cyclura and in particular rhinos and Cuban iguanas?
Boy, that's a bit ambiguous.
Yeah. I guess how I would assume, I guess not going to make an assumption on it, but for most people, probably indoor keeping of Cyclura. How general overview of how to go about it.
They do need room, and they do need the ability to climb on things in order to keep their muscle tonus. They can go downhill in a hurry if they don't get enough really good exercise.
Okay.
Even though it may sound bad, if you put in a panel of 1/4-inch mesh screen or 1/2-inch mesh screen that they can climb up and down, they'll be up and down that all day long. Gives them something to do, and it also gives them different perspective as far as what they see from down below and what they see from above.
Yeah.
There's so many other things. I'm not trying to dodge her question. It's just it's a question that I could answer for about 2 days.
Right.
So if I could ask her to please write back and ask some specific stuff, I'll try to answer it right away for you.
Cool. All right, down the line, Brooke again. So when housing pairs in captivity, is it best to house them separately when they're not breeding, since they are solitary in the wild besides breeding season?
Yeah, and a lot of people have found out the hard way. The males and females often fight. The males always fight, and the females will fight with each other. Although you're usually pretty safe keeping females together if they got some room.
Okay.
And again, remember, these are idiomatic animals. What works for one doesn't work for another. So you have to err on the side of safety.
Yeah.
I have at times kept as many as 9 or 10 animals in one convenient area, and they just sort of set up a pecking order. But you got to be careful when you do that, and you got to do it gently. The introductions have to be soft introductions. And if you find anybody who starts beating up on everybody else, they get to be put in the corner for a while. Time out.
Yep. Okay.
By the way, they've got pretty good hearing.
Yeah.
They really do.
For sure. Yeah, it seems like just about everything that they do that other reptiles do, they do it a lot better.
I hate to say it that way, but you know, we're going to be accused of bias here.
Yeah.
But they are just amazing old animals. They really are. That's why we call them dragons of the Caribbean.
Yeah. I got a couple of things of my own to come back with, but I want to hit some of these questions while they come in. Brooke threw a kind of a follow-up to this one. Have you ever seen true pair bonds in Cyclura?
No. And that is an excellent question. I purposely have watched for that, and not really. They seem to be very comfortably at odds with each other much of the time. But another great question, and one that deserves some looking at and reaching out to other people who have had experience. As you well know, I keep mastiffs, as in the dogs. And people will tell you flat out, don't ever keep 2 males together. You're going to have a bloodbath. I have kept as many as 4 males together and never had a bloodbath over, 40 years?
Mm.
And it's all in something called habituating and creating what we call a proofed animal. That is a concept that I can't go into in this. It would take me days to flesh that one out. But it has a lot to do with the person who's keeping them.
Yeah.
And what you've learned about the animals and what they learn about you. Get them to the point where they have no fear of you, and yet they respect your space, so to speak, and you're halfway there.
Beautiful. And then another kind of follow-up question that she asked as well. What do you recommend as a full-size adult enclosure for a cornuta?
Oh, as much space as you can give them conveniently. I would say, ideally, if you can go 12 to 16 feet long, at least 7 foot high, and anywhere from 4 to 8 feet in width.
Mm.
But having stuff that they can hook their claws into really makes a difference.
Okay. Absolutely.
They also they do crazy jumping, and they do this in the wild. I watched a big Steininger at one point. He had been up, I would say, 35 or 40 feet on a cliff, and suddenly just pushed himself off and let himself drop. And what they do is they take a big breath as they do it. And when they hit the ground, they let the air out as they hit. So they got a built-in airbag. I went over because I thought, oh my God, this thing's going to be dead. I got over there and he was shaking himself off and walking away.
Yep. Yeah, I've seen some pretty dramatic crash and burns. And you look over like, oh my God, what happened? And the lizard's just sitting there like, what?
They're also excellent swimmers. Really, really good swimmers. They keep themselves slightly inflated so they float, and off they go.
Okay. Very cool. Yeah. So Amy asked to follow up. So she said that she's in Florida, so she could keep them outside, and I guess that the cage parameters, I would assume, kind of remains true. But for an indoor enclosure, temperature and humidity, and I guess to add into that, probably what's like a good basking spot temperature for them.
They can take high heat. I'm not saying they prefer it. They're not like a Euromastix or something like that, but they can handle. If you go to, for instance, on Anegada, which is known as the sunken island because most of it is below sea level. People don't know that. When I talk about a weird environment.
Wow.
I've taken some of the temperatures on some of the animals that we caught up that were basking there. And that's not an easy thing to do. Let me tell you, those are some big creatures and they don't like being caught. But I should do this in American and not in Celsius. I think 111 or 112 was the highest we got on a body temperature.
Okay.
Fahrenheit. So that's really hot.
Yeah.
You know, that's blood boiling for some creatures.
Okay.
As far as humidity goes, they definitely do better in a more humid situation. Keeping in mind they live on islands, and they've got essentially a wet breeze going all day long.
Right.
The wind is constantly carrying high amounts of moisture to them. So yeah, you want to keep that humidity up there.
Okay. And I'll throw a follow-up of my own in there of do you experience them drinking standing water, or are they really getting most of the moisture from the moisture in the air?
In captivity, they'll take it either way, but in the wild, they get almost all of it from the occasional rainstorm and the cactus and other things that carry a great deal of influence. I am, by the looks of this, losing my signal here.
Oh.
If suddenly I disappear, if I can, to all of you, thank you for everything, but we're going to do this more, and we're going to do this again, and we're going to keep working on these Cyclura if people want me to. I would like to do at least 2 more shows on Cyclura.
Okay.
How are you about that?
I love it. There's one more chat question I do want to get to, if you have a time for it.
Go for it.
All right. So Brendan asks again, is there a reason why Cyclura are the ones that are ESA protected, but then other critically endangered iguanas like Bakeri delicatissima are readily available in private collections?
Oh, I don't pretend to know what drives some of these crazy exclusions and inclusions. I can't see anything in particular. Squeaky wheel routine, I think, is about the best I can come up with. The Cyclura certainly need the protection, but they don't need exclusion.
Right.
If I may take a moment and say to everyone, thank you for all of this. Thank you for being interested, and thank you for caring. It's incredibly important that we do so.
Absolutely.
But beyond that, I am currently doing a program with my big baby anaconda called Anaconda. Hang on, let me see if I'm losing you here.
You cut out for a quick second, but I think you're good now.
Yeah. Okay. I hate being left hanging here. Anaconda, the little known giant. And I'm going around and doing my program with them. If you have an event for a donation, we can come to where you are within reason. Not out to save the Chinese astronauts. Giggle, giggle. Uh, that's just unbelievable. Did you hear about that? Three astronauts got stuck in the Chinese star house, whatever they call it. I can't remember what it translates to, but anyhow, it's
I
their
heard about
station.
the American astronauts that got stuck in the space station, but
Yeah, well, this is the Chinese
oh wow,
equivalent. So
jeez,
3 of them got stuck. So they sent 3 more to get them out. Guess who got stuck?
oh no.
Yeah, 3 more.
Oh,
Anyhow, let me get back to what I was saying.
I will stay
I do
right.
programs of all different sorts, including things that go all the way from postdoc and having to do with RNA evolution, DNA, and lots of other things having to do with biochem. If you're interested, you can get in touch with me at 352-423-0081, 352-423-0081. Yes, I actually gave out my phone number because I hate text messages. I loathe them. Anyhow, if you're serious and you would like to do something or like us to do something with you, it's quite an opportunity because this particular anaconda is positive for non-pathologic giantism. And it may be the reason that we've been looking for years as to why the big ones are so rare, but they actually exist. Little Alice is 10 years old. I'm sorry, 5 years old.
Yeah.
And her litter mates are all about the same size. They're all about 10 to 11 feet in length and 18 to 20 pounds. She is 178 pounds as of 2 or 3 weeks ago, and about 14 and a half feet, maybe a little more than that. And she has been fed even less than they have. So she has something that's known as non-pathologic giantism, which is very, very rare. She also has a wonderful personality, likes people, and likes to hang out with the guys. We will do 1 hour shows, we'll do 3 hour shows, we'll do afternoons, we'll do all day. You got somebody who that would make their day or their life. We could probably put it together. We'll do more and more of those. I just did the National Mensa group in Chicago, and we got rave reviews. As a matter of fact, 2 days later, we got calls from the Mensa people to do another set of programs because the people who didn't get to see it heard about it and were clamoring that they wanted more. So it's a wonderful feeling, and they've been wonderful people to work with. And I don't have to explain everything. I can be lazy with them. No, it's a very fine group. For those of you who don't know what Mensa is, take a look. Maybe you can qualify for it, or at least be interested in how it works and what they do. I'm probably going to end up as a member someday soon because I put it off way too long. We'll see what happens. Please contact. We'd love to work with you. We'd love to teach you things. And I maintain a very large library for those of you who don't know that. I would say it's probably one of the better libraries around for herpetology. Would you concur with that?
It's the best that I have seen, although I have seen far fewer than you have, but yeah, very impressive library.
Which is available to anybody who's a serious worker. Okay, let's go to the end here. Let's when it kicks off, it kicks off.
All right.
Do we have another question?
We do have a couple. So this is a follow-up to talks about the legalities. Brooke asks, doesn't it have to do sometimes with individual governments? She says that I believe the pure Lewisii and zoos are all owned by the Cayman government. So if they wanted any of them back at any point, that they could just say give them back, and there they go.
Yeah, that's a thorny issue. They do belong to the Cayman government, but that doesn't really do the animals any good,
Yeah.
because the Cayman government has yet to show me that they're serious about what they're doing with these animals. I spent so much time and so much of my own money working on them, and it got me a slap in the face.
Hmm.
So yes, that's what you're supposing is probably true, but God only knows why and how that works. The Philippine government is the same way with the Philippine crocodiles, but they sort of admit that it's more window dressing than reality.
Hmm.
So
Sure. Oh, it's irritating for sure. Another question that Brendan had, he said he noticed you've said specifically you had a Steinengerii. What would be the main reason for subspecies classification of those from Cornuta?
they're not, they're a species.
Full. So then I guess
As far as I'm concerned, they are a full species.
Okay.
The people who did this, have looked at a couple of them that were dissected in a laboratory or laying upside down in a bottle. If you go out there and work with them, look at them, look at live ones, and you'll see a whole bunch of differences.
Okay. What are a few of the things that are mostly significant differences between the two?
Well, they're the way they're built, and the Steinengerii are extremely heavy-bodied animals.
Okay.
Coloration is quite different. Even the way they move is a little bit different.
Interesting.
Yeah. And again, I will reiterate that there are probably 2 more forms of rhino iguanas that have not been acknowledged off the coast of Hispaniola on small islands.
Wow.
Oh.
Did we potentially lose Terry? I'll give it a second, but as of now, it does potentially seem that way. Well, if we in fact have lost Terry, thank you guys for being here for the episode. For me, this is one of the more like heavily dense, information-packed shows that I have done here so far. For anybody who wants to keep up with what I'm doing, I guess I'll plug this at the end, might as well. I'm on Instagram at scrubshepherd, Stephen Kush on Facebook, Kush Reptile on YouTube. That's pretty much the thing I've been pushing the hardest, I would say, aside from the podcast over the last year or so. And, really excited about that stuff. I'm also Kush Reptile on Morph Market as well. I have a few animals listed available right there. And I will probably be doing a little Black Friday kind of thing with the handful of individual animals I have available down the stretch here this year. The shipping window is closing very, very quickly for the winter. So the last few will be going out, and then shipping will basically be shut down until probably at the earliest late February, kind of depending on where you are and what the temps are looking like in Indy and Memphis. But other than that, I do believe we have unfortunately lost Terry for the evening, but I'll do a couple quick shout outs. The Dragonwood Conservancy on Instagram, if you want to keep up with everything that they're doing specifically with the crocodilians down in Florida. I believe it is thedragonwoodconcervancy.org is the website. If you want to look it up, potentially look into donating. Everything that you are able to donate helps the cause, no doubt about it. Just thank you everyone once again for being here with us this evening. I really love this conversation. It's always great having Terry on the podcast. To me, I don't know if I've ever known anybody with more knowledge about reptiles. And as he has said over and over again, he really doesn't have a presence on media, on social media, on the internet. So for me to be able to have these episodes here live forever, just, is what I love to, about doing podcasts. And I, hope that everyone can glean as much information and knowledge about reptiles and herpetoculture as I have from Terry. So definitely we'll do this again before too long. Thank you everybody once again for being here, for tuning in for this episode. And I'll catch you all back here next week for a new show.